Greetings and welcome to another episode of I Survived Youth Group in the 90s. I'm your host, Scott, and with me is my very annoyed co-host, Caleb. Caleb, we haven't done an intro in a while, and you got a look on your face when I said greetings.
I was just holding back the laugh because I think we haven't done an intro in a while, and I was not ready for it, which how could I not be ready for it?
No, yeah, well, even if you think you are, you're not. So.
Messed up.
You'll learn. Say we're back again to talk about the experience growing up as youth group kids in the 90s and how that has shaped our adult lives. We'll talk to old friends about their faith journeys spanning from the 90s to today and discuss current cultural topics through the lens of someone who grew up during that era. Caleb, who is our guest?
Yeah, it's funny that intro we still use the phrase old friends. We'll talk to old friends because this was Josh, who was neither of us had ever talked to. And so was just somebody who I think he got connected to my music show, and then he started listening to this show and reached out and just said, hey, I'd be interested in coming on the show and talking. So totally new to us, a new friend that we got to talk with. So yeah, kind of cool.
Good point. And like we're not big. This is our hobby. We're not big enough to like screen people or know what they're going to say. We're just like, sure, come on, tell us your story. So it could have been pretty wild, but actually it ends up being one of my favorite conversations we've had just because Josh is a really genuine dude. He's been doing this church thing for a long time in a few different capacities. And man, he's got some really, really good stories.
Yeah, we got stuff that we continue to have this amazing thread of similar but different. And we got some stuff that we had never heard of before. And I think that's so cool. And so, yeah, I think I had even texted you beforehand. I was like, just a heads up. Like, I know Josh a little, like I've interacted with him a little online, but I don't know. So I don't know what we're getting into. Right. And I think both of us, I think the text between us afterwards was like, well, that one really great. That was awesome. You know, I mean, so it was kind of one of those things. And I love that thread still of just something new. Yes, it feels similar. It smells like youth group. It tastes like youth group, but there's just this slight different flavor that they had. They had that paprika, and you know, we don't do that here in the North. I don't know where I'm going with this analogy.
Great spice analogy there, Caleb. But I do distinctly remember texting you while in the middle of the episode, and my text to you was, "This guy rules," just because like he was so fun to talk to, and he was really like unassuming. He didn't come in like guns blazing, like I got all these great stories. He was just like, "This is me. I'm comfortable with who I am. Let's share this experience together." So it was really fun because he's had some pretty unique experiences that feel like a lot of other people should have heard about it or at least said something about it now, but they just haven't. So I'm excited for our listeners to hear what he has to say.
Yep. And another person who's been doing or involved in youth ministry for an entire life. And I think that's a pretty cool testimony too of just, you know, kind of something that feels like it stuck with him and just kind of that staying involved is a pretty cool idea that you've still involved with youth ministry all those years later.
Yeah. Well, Josh, thank you very much for joining us. We really appreciate the time. Obviously, we very much enjoyed our conversation with you. And thank you to the listeners out there who listened today. We hope that you enjoy.
I want to break in and quickly remind everyone that the views and opinions expressed on this episode of I Survived Youth Group in the 90s may not be held by or even approved of by everyone appearing on this episode. One of the goals of this show is to give everyone a safe space to share their opinions and thoughts on deeply personal matters of faith. We are not looking to start an argument, but instead we want to let people share how they feel. During our interviews and discussions, we may not represent every point of view on a given subject, and we understand that this may be frustrating at times, but it is the nature of a podcast discussion with a limited amount of time. We also know and want to acknowledge that our memories of events that happened 25 to 30 years ago may not be 100% accurate. We assume everyone's best intentions as they share how they remember the experience of their youth. Now, back to the show.
Okay, we are welcoming to our show this evening our new friend Josh. Josh, thank you for reaching out and wanting to join the podcast. It's great to meet you. Tell us a little bit just kind of about yourself and about your youth group past, because you reached out to us just having not really known either of us but finding the pod and figuring out, hey, this is fun content. I want to join the conversation. So give us a little bit of background on yourself. Like, how did you grow up in youth group? Was it the '90s? What was the situation?
Yeah, so I started youth group in sixth grade. That would have probably been around 92, 93.
Perfect.
And I have been part of three youth groups ever since that time.
Hmm.
So after my own youth group experience, during college, I felt called to be a youth pastor. And I did that part time for 1 to 2 years.
Hmm.
Hmm.
That was short lived. During that time, I was finishing college as well as working a part time job. So it was just a part time ministry thing. After that, I finally landed at another church as an attendee about the age of 24,
Hmm.
maybe 23. I got involved in that youth ministry and I've been serving as a youth volunteer for the last 19 years.
Hmm.
Whoa, nice. Good for you. What was the part-time gig about? I mean, I part-time youth pastor was kind of a dying breed, That was how had to do it in the past. But was
Yes.
it just a smaller church situation?
Yeah, it was definitely a smaller church. I would say there was maybe 50 people in attendance at the church.
Hmm.
When we really got the youth group rolling, there were times where we had maybe 50 kids there.
Whoa.
Hmm.
It was a small town. The church was very traditional, but at the same time, we were trying to kind of make it more modern, and
Hmm.
so there was a struggle there, taking what people were used to, and then trying to change a lot of things at once. It ended up not really working out real well. The pastor left, and when he left, me and some other people on staff left as well.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's not the right thing for a church, depending on their congregants and what their backgrounds are. But it sounds like you've had plenty of experience with it, both as a youth yourself and as a youth leader. That's awesome. We love getting youth leaders on here, especially volunteers. This you might be. Did you say volunteer capacity?
Yes, the current church that I'm at now, I have volunteered with that youth ministry for 19 years, and I have served under five different youth pastors during that time.
Sounds about right on average. Did they ever reach out to you like, "Hey man, come on, just do this part time"?
No. I actually, in the last 2 years, I have went on staff at the church as the custodian. So,
Oh,
Nice.
nice.
given my background and just a little bit of youth ministry I did, I think I work better as someone's right hand man and not as the leader.
Yep. And those people are very important, as you've probably heard if you listen to some of our episodes. They give and create memories for those students that are long lasting. So you may be the first adult volunteer that we've talked to.
Jackie
Right, Caleb?
Jackie was still involved.
Jackie's still involved. Yeah,
Yeah.
Mike's. I suppose some of our first friends that we
Yeah.
talked to early on are still involved. But
Bill does some stuff in that capacity. So I
yeah,
can think of a couple of people who are, but I don't think we've had any 19 years straight. I think that's a record. I'm checking the books right now, and I think you've set a record.
Yeah, one of the great things about our youth ministry is that we have about 15 really good volunteers.
Hmm.
yeah,
And other than the youth pastor, we have six other members who actually are on a preaching team. So our middle schoolers are separate from our high schoolers, and so they
hmm,
don't have the same preacher every week. And so
nice.
I'm a part of that team as well. And so once a month, I get to preach to them as well.
Hmm.
That's awesome. Well, what about the background of your upbringing as you were entering youth group in the sixth grade? Was your home a Christian home? Was it not? Were you going to a youth group different than your parents? That sort of thing.
Yeah, so I have a very interesting story as far as growing up. I was born out of wedlock. I have a twin brother.
Hmm.
Um, and so our mother had just turned 20 when we were born, and our biological father was 17, and my mom was a pastor's kid.
Hmm.
Hmm.
So th that was I guess, a bit of a curveball for the family.
Sure.
Our biological father, he did propose. Um, I think it was in the hospital after we were born,
Mm.
but it didn't work out for them to be married. And 2 months later, we moved.
Hmm.
The flip side of the story is that 19 years later, while my twin brother was at youth camp, so we're part of the Pentecostal. It was the Pentecostal Holiness Church denomination.
Yep.
Okay.
And so half of the state, the churches would get together for youth camp every summer.
Okay.
So at 19 years old, my brother's at youth camp, and it turns out that our biological father, his wife, is uh, part of this puppet ministry.
Huh.
Whoa.
And so it's like she's leading the kids' camp as you know the minister, and someone who knows us and knows her says, "Well, you know who that is, right?" And she did not. She had not seen a picture of us in a while.
Huh.
Uh huh.
And so just through that, Aunt reached out, and we were able to make a connection and finally meet our biological father at 19 years old.
Huh.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and so she was involved in that ministry with puppets, and then they had three children, so we found out we had three half brothers.
There you go.
Huh.
And so we've been able to have a relationship ever since then. But my grandfather being a pastor, he pastors moved around quite frequently back then. So he might be at a church for 3 years, and then move to another one. My mom, she did remarry. Well, not remarry. She did get married when me and my brother were six,
Mm-hmm.
and so the her husband adopted us, and so he's been our father. But he does not go to church, so I would.
Mm.
He has never been a Christian. So
Mm-hmm.
we lived with my grandparents until she got married, but of course she still took us to church after that. So.
Huh.
I see. I
Yeah,
see.
and then the youth ministry I got involved in, my grandfather was the pastor of that church.
Okay. Okay.
It was a church of about 250 members, and I would say we had a good 20 to 30 kids in the youth group.
Wow. That's pretty good. So you had faith kind of flowing through your family from your grandfather on down, and just kind of ended up back at church eventually.
Oh yeah, I mean I went to church the whole time. My mom went to church the whole time. It's just that our father who adopted us, he does not.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Well, thank you for sharing all of that. That's quite the backstory. Maybe some of that will come up later in our questions and answers. But so sixth grade onward, you've always been involved in youth group in some capacity. At that age, because that's like Caleb and I too. Sixth grade was about 1993 ish. 94 maybe. I'm sure we can identify things that are similar. But what for you as at that age, middle school, high schooler, how would you describe your faith at that time?
So what I would say is that I was just kind of going with the flow of whatever was next, just trying to do my best to be a part and be involved. I would say for the longest time, it's probably just feels like I was just going through the motions.
Mm.
If something was asked of me, I would do it, wouldn't really question it. If we're passing out flyers door to door, I'm just knocking on doors and passing out flyers. If we're going on a trip, then I'm signing up and I'm doing it. I really thought about this that, now that I'm 44, I've had a long time to really serve the Lord, but at like 16 to 18 years old, I may have only, that's maybe like 12 years that
Huh.
you would say that you've been a Christian or in church and have been learning about the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
So with 12 years, I would say that we really didn't know as much as we thought we might have.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, well put, for sure. Do any, when you think about that youth group time, do any significant memories pop out, or what are the most vivid memories you have that still stay with you?
I think like you two, how y'all would just hang out at each other's houses all the time. Like we just had our people. Like the youth
Mm,
group was just your people. And so if we were not at church, we were going somewhere together.
mm.
Like we would just get in the car and five of us would just go to the movies, go to Taco Bell, and you could do that on $5 back in the 90s.
Heck yeah, dude.
And so or we were just hanging out at somebody's house, you know. So the best thing for me is just the people that you were there with.
Mm.
You almost build lifelong memories with them. But other than just the kids in your group, like the Pentecostal Holiness Church, you actually saw kids from other churches like every summer.
Interesting.
Another thing that I haven't heard brought up yet was we did what was called Teen Talent. Um,
Teen talent.
Teen
No.
Talent.
Okay.
So,
Explain.
okay, so Teen Talent was where you would take creative arts, whether it was drawing, paintings, singing, or what y'all call human videos,
Yeah.
and you would compete against other people from other churches.
Whoa.
So yeah, so we took human videos to another level,
Whoa.
and 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 you would have what was called like your conference. So you would have like half. I'm from South Carolina, so half the churches from South Carolina would get together and compete, and then there would be judges, and whoever won would go on to nationals. Um,
Nationals.
yes.
Teen
Now,
talent.
yes. So now, when you went to nationals during the summer, it was either like I know one year was in Ohio, another year was in North Carolina, another year was in Florida. So maybe we're talking about like the southeast of the United States.
Sure.
And you would go to nationals and you would compete. So if you won, like you're going through, and we would just take dramas that we thought could win and go and compete against other kids. Now, when they had Teen Talent, they also thought, hey, this is a great idea that we can, start having a conference as well.
Mm.
So during the day, you would compete in different things, but at night, we would get together for a big service.
Oh,
They would
sure.
have praise and worship, and then you
Sure.
would bring in the big name preachers.
Sure. Sure. Tell me right now you're gonna pull a trophy out from the side of the camera and just be like, "And we won Teen Talent in 1996."
We did not win Teen Talent, but I will say we a good close another church that was an hour away that we were real good friends with.
Hmm.
They won. I'm pretty sure they won nationals one year doing a drama to the song "Youth of the Nation" by POD.
Oh, nice.
So
Nice.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
And it looks like it's still going today. I mean, I just Googled it. Is your church today involved in that, or is it something that kind of switched denominations and not involved with anymore?
well, I'm still Pentecostal, but my church today is a Church of God.
Okay.
Mm.
I'm not. I'm sure that it's probably going on, but our church I know does not participate in
Okay.
things like that.
Yeah, it looks like it is. They were making a big announcement about 2026. So that, I mean, they're still trugging along. It looks like that's
Yes.
pretty crazy.
So yeah. So I remember one year at the conference, we I had a band that was going to play, and so they put us all up in the choir, and they were going to do the vocals, like solo vocals first. And that year, I think there was 18 female singers,
Hmm.
and the time limit was 5 minutes at max.
Mm.
But I believe that 10 of them sang that song "My Redeemer Lives" by Nicole C. Mullins,
Yeah.
and I was just done.
Hmm.
I was
Couldn't
like, this
compete.
is too much.
Was it like American? I'm very fascinated by this. Was it like American Idol style where the like judges were in chairs and were like, yes, perform, and
Yeah.
then they hit a button, or like who was judging this whole thing?
No, so yes, they did have judges who were, like worship pastors who were
All
at
right.
some of the bigger churches.
Yeah.
So they would be the judges for like there was every category that you could think of. Solo, and then it would be like ensemble for like two to three singers, and then a choir, And then you had dramas that were like two music, that were no music, and it just lasted all day long.
Was it like the Oscars, like best original screenplay for, non-musical drama or something, or was it just one winner at the end?
I mean, when it was one winner at conference, and then as that conference winner, you got to go on in and compete at nationals. But I mean, I remember one guy that was really good at drums, and I mean,
Mm.
so like drums solo was a competition, and I remember the year that he made it to nationals, like a bunch of us just went to support him, and we made sure that when he competed, we were there.
That is so cool.
I mean, it is cool, but when you think, I mean, you kind of think back on it as like, why were we doing that?
Because it's something to do. I mean, I mean, it's something to do with kids. I clearly it brought a sense of camaraderie, I want to say. Like, you're there competing, and I mean, it gives kids something to do. It also feels like, maybe, is it something that there's the talent in the church? Like, we've talked about, like, we didn't have a
Yeah.
band, we never did anything music, and I think it's because our youth pastor, that just wasn't his gifting.
Mhm.
And I mean, there were people in our there I can think of at least one volunteer who was a great guitarist, but we didn't have like a band because it just wasn't there. And so, like, does that part of it of like gifting of the church, like, hey, these leaders can help with this. You can almost have like a mentor or something in this talent. We did dramas because we actually had Marcy, her daughter was on our show. Like, she was able to help with those sorts of things. That was the talent we had in the church that was able to pour into kids. So that's really interesting.
I wonder too. We're heavily analyzing team talent, but I think it's fascinating because, like you said, we've never heard of it before, but it was obviously a big thing. And my immediate off the cuff, uneducated answer about why are we doing this, I really like different types of art. Like, God creates different types of people with different talents, different abilities, and that shows up in so many different ways. And so to have this like competition that wasn't, at the end of the day, you might have a winner. Ultimately, it's like, yeah, we're kind of just glorifying God with the talents He gave us, and we're being super creative with it. And maybe there's messaging that comes through to different people, right? That's the other part of it too, is different kinds of art hit different people in different ways. Whether it's different types of music or dramas or talent. I mean, we can be used in so many different ways, and that's a really interesting way to highlight all the things that people can do. Wow. Now, do you have kids? Are they youth group age, or have they gone through youth group, or like are you prepping them for youth group at this time?
Yeah, actually, so me and my wife adopted two sisters, and
Oh
so our
wow.
daughters, they're now 12 and 11, and both of them are just now in the middle school youth group.
Okay. So prime time. They're it's starting up.
Hmm.
Do they kind of understand what it is and that understand that dad's a part of it, and are they excited for it?
Yeah, they most definitely wanted to be part of it. I think by the last year of Kids Church, they were just like, I think I've outgrown this. I'm ready for the youth group.
Okay. All right. Do you tell them any stories about what happened during your time at youth group?
I have not really told them a lot of stories. I don't know if they would really understand.
You got to start telling them now, even though they don't understand. Just be like, I got to prep you. You got to be ready for it.
You don't want to scare them off.
Yeah,
Well,
well,
no.
I will say that once a year we do what we call a lockout. Did y'all do these where you stay up all night long?
Oh
We
yeah,
call them lock-ins,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah, so we
but
did too.
yeah, in the church, right? Then
Yeah,
no one's
so
leaving. Yep.
yeah, so in my youth, growing up in youth group, like we might go bowling, but then you're back at the gym by 1 o'clock, and we just play basketball all night.
Mm-hmm.
So now, what we do is we call it lockout, and we actually leave the church at 7 o'clock, and we'll go to like a place that you can do like the indoor jumping trampoline
Oh yeah,
parks,
sure.
and then we'll go to another place that has like an arcade, or maybe a bowling, something like that. And we get back to the church at 1 o'clock, and then it's you're locked in until 6. But
Mhm.
it's not when I did it, it was just a free for all because we had a gym and we just wanted to play basketball.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So now it's kind of more organized, and the kids play nine square, four square, gaga ball.
Yeah.
We have to take a break to feed them snacks, and then at some point we just throw a movie on, and it's
Yeah.
like your parents are gonna be here in 2 hours, so just watch this movie.
I'm going to bed.
Yeah.
So some things remain the same. Yeah, well, they work. I think my son's church does a lock-in of sorts, but it's always during baseball season, so like he never has gotten to go. But I think they still do that. So
Yeah, it's our kids look forward to it every year. It's
oh yeah,
like they think it's the greatest thing.
yeah. Well, overall for your time in youth group, yourself, just in general, what did you love about it?
Our youth pastor was just fantastic. Um, his name was Tommy, and I feel like he was just always having something for us to do, and he was always there for us.
Mm,
Um, at least once a month, we did what was called TNT, and we would just go to the gym and play basketball from 9 to 12. He would do a short devotional, and most of the time, he would drive you home afterwards.
mm,
Um, During the summers, we would do something that was called like prayer breakfast. And so we would all have to get together in the conference room, and he would make us all go around the table, and one at a time we had to say a prayer. And
mm,
so it really got you out of your comfort zone. Some people were better at than others, but it was like, hey, we're going to support you no matter what you say. And no matter how uncomfortable you feel, like everyone's going to pray. And it just kind of teaches you to pray out loud in front of other people.
mm,
Sometimes after that, we would, go play putt putt or go swimming somewhere. But one thing I do remember is for our trips, we had to raise our money.
yeah.
And so we would either have like car washes, or a lot of times after prayer breakfast during the summer, there were like yards that we would cut the grass.
Mm-hmm.
And so he would load like four or five of us up, and we're off like cutting grass at somebody's yard to raise money for our trip.
Yeah.
Um, I know today it's just like, hey, we're going on a trip. This is how much it costs. And if you have trouble paying it, let us know.
Yeah.
And they almost just find someone who can pay for it.
Yeah. That's an interesting comment. I did have to raise money too for a couple of missions trips. It wasn't through any type of community activity like that, but it was sending letters out to family and friends and asking, "Hey, I'm doing this. Could you please support me by praying for me? And if you're willing to support me financially." I mean, Caleb, you certainly had that experience going overseas, raising money yourself. So, um, yeah, it is a little different
Mhm.
now because our church is the same thing. It's like if you can't pay for it, there are scholarships. That's what they call them, and it's basically just a generous person paying for someone who might not be able to go, which is also a very good thing. Well, it sounds like your youth group time was super rich and pretty similar to Caleb, myself, and a lot of other people, like meaningful, close relationships. A youth pastor that cared and that you connected with really, really deeply. Well, thanks for sharing that background. Background is always kind of the first half of the interview here. What about now? Obviously things have changed for everybody in some way, but like, how does your faith compare to where you were at back then?
So my faith today compared to back then, I mean, like back then, I really didn't even know how to study the Bible.
Mm,
I didn't know how to look at a commentary. I didn't know how to look up what the word meant in Hebrew. Um, so now that I have more experience, like I went to college, I started reading more theology books. I feel like if you gave a middle schooler or a high schooler like a deep theology book, they're just like, I'm done with theology.
Hmm.
But I believe at some point, you want to learn more yourself.
mm,
And so I picked up a few books, like C.S. Lewis became a great author that I love to read. Today, with my job, I get to listen to either podcast or music like 24/7 the whole
nice.
time at work. So there's different pastors that either I have a connection with. We've had two. preachers at our church who have left and planted other churches. And so I usually try to listen to a different sermon every day. Um, I got, I found out about Joshua Porter, who was Josh Dodds from the band Showbread.
Okay.
So my brother told me that he has a church called Van City. So I went back and listened to all of his sermons on his podcast.
Hmm.
And really, that was probably the first time that I ever heard what like spiritual formation is.
Hmm.
He brought up a guy named John Mark Comer.
Oh yeah.
So I started reading some of his books. He does a thing now called Practicing the Way. It's a whole like video series. So I really got into that. And so I would say that the last few years is just learning how to have spiritual formation in my life,
Mm-hmm.
having structure in my life. Um, Through all of that, I've been able to, because I am Pentecostal, I have been able to grow in like tongues, interpretations, and prophecy, different spiritual gifts that I found out that I do have.
Mm-hmm. Wow, I really respect people who want to dive into theology on any level, really. But you're right. At some middle school or even a high school, I was like, no, thank you. I have my other work to do, and that makes total sense. But to put them in a position where they're still hungry to know more and want to kind of have that own path of figuring things out for themselves is really cool. And especially these days, there's so much content out there that they can consume as long as it's written by qualified people and everything, I suppose. But that's really awesome that you just kind of dove right into it and wanted to make it your own on that level. Has anything been like drastically different, or like you just kind of feel like you just kind of continue to build on who you were back then?
No, I think the main thing is just back then I just didn't really have a framework of how to go about it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really pick up and remember things that are taught to me really well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, after high school, I went to a liberal arts university.
Mm-hmm.
It was Presbyterian, but it was 5 minutes from my house, so I could live at home and go to the school.
Nice.
Um, and just going to college, I was a Christian education major, so I was exposed to a lot more in classes that just kind of made me think. One of the great things that my Bible professor would say was he had this line that said, "Faith seek understanding." And so for me, I was like, okay, well, the foundation is faith. Like that's starts there. So once you have faith, it's just seeking out what you want to know more about and then gain more understanding about it.
Indeed. And there's a verse, I don't have the reference. Isn't the verse something along the lines of love your Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, and your mind? And I think sometimes people forget one of those. I certainly forget one of those, but I gravitated towards, after I really had felt with, that I had loved the Lord with my soul, my heart, like, oh, now let's engage in that on a mental level and not be afraid of it. Sometimes it's a little scary for people to go that route. Is there a certain teaching that's come out of, or something you've learned coming out of those readings, podcasts, sermons, that sort of thing? Anything like a teaching that has really helped you approach things differently now?
Yeah, I would say that I had always struggled with having a consistent prayer life.
Hmm.
It was just something that I never really attached to it and felt comfortable with it.
Mm-hmm.
The Practice in the Way practice has a 4 week video series on prayer. And so they really broke down different things and different methods that really helped me and made it more practical.
Okay.
And so I've really latched onto that. And I think it's made a big difference in the last couple of years of my faith.
Nice. Now you say you have that Pentecostal background and been reading about the Pentecostal gifts. I have very little exposure to that, but I do have some because in college, my friends were going to a Pentecostal church in town, so we went for a little while. And then when I was working at the bookstore, we had a couple of people who were going to the Apostolic Bible Institute, which is in St. Paul. And so they were, they were kind of learning the same things. Do you have not an outlet, but do you have a capacity to kind of use those or practice those? Or is that kind of something more that you kind of have to hold tight a little bit because there's not any place for you to use those gifts?
No, I'm able to use them at church. So our church, is very much like praise band. Raise your hands. You can say hallelujah, amen. You can get loud during worship. And one thing about, like the Church of God is a lot of churches have kind of backed off of like speaking in tongues and things like that because they're afraid
Mm,
that it's going to scare off the visitors. But our pastor has embraced it at my church. And so we do have times where people will have tongues and then it's interpreted for the whole church.
mm,
And when that happens, he takes time to explain to the whole congregation, hey, this is what happened. This is where you can read about it in the Bible. And this is why we allow it to happen and we believe in it because it's edifying the whole body.
mm,
I think a lot of the problems with charismatics is that sometimes that those things can get out of control. A lot of times people can abuse prophecy.
mm,
But I think that if it's done in a decent order, then it really is what Paul said, that it will edify the body. Also, I've had times where people have given me a prophetic word and it just meant the world to me. It's like, God
mm,
sees what you're going through at that time.
mm,
So there's been times where I've been able to use that to help somebody. And I think anytime that happens, you should judge it.
Hmm.
The Bible tells you to judge it and
mm.
make sure that it lines up because people can tell you, hey, the Lord's telling me that you should do this. Well, if God ain't put that on your heart, then a lot of times I believe the prophecy is to confirm what you already believe
Mm,
or what you're already feeling or going through. So
mhm.
if you haven't felt that, then you need to judge that and say that's probably not right. You probably heard
Sure,
from God wrong.
sure. I think that's a super interesting and healthy way to approach it because you have kind of these things that are hard to quantify because we have the written word and we're going back to it, but also we're experiencing that in modern day. And of course, one of our most recent episodes we've had one the person was in a relationship where they were abusing prophecy to
Yeah,
manipulate
yeah.
him. And so it's so ripe for something like that. But to have someone be honest about it and be like, yes, please judge it. And also, hey, if you're a visitor, don't worry. It's fine. We're not crazy. This is what we believe, and here's why. I think that's a super interesting, healthy way to go about those gifts that are pretty apparent in the New Testament.
Yeah, I would add to that being Pentecostal, it just kind of chose me. I was born into it. My grandfather was Pentecostal, my mom's Pentecostal, so
Hmm.
it's just if I was born into a Baptist family, I'd probably be Baptist. But
Nothing wrong with that at all. No, I mean it's alive and well, clearly. So, it's still chugging along. Looking back on through this lens of growing your faith through educating yourself and listening to a lot of different pastors and things like that. Is there something that you look back on your youth group experience and kind of struggle with or are confused by or tell yourself, like, you know what, I probably would have done that differently?
so just like on the whole Pentecostal thing is growing up, a lot of it didn't get explained to you. It just
Hmm.
kind of assumed like you knew that you're in a Pentecostal church, so you kind of know what was going on.
Hmm.
I had a friend who would spend the night with me a lot, or I would spend the night at his house, and he was Baptist. So if I stayed at his house, we would go to his church on Sunday.
Hmm.
He came to my church one time, and we use this language, and I've heard it before, where we say "slain in the spirit,"
Oh, yeah.
and that's just a terrible way of saying that someone felt the presence of God so strong that they couldn't stay on their feet.
Sure.
And so he was visiting with me, and that happened. And so I remember him telling me he was like he just like I got to go to the bathroom. And so like 15 minutes have gone by and I'm like, where's he at? So I like walk outside and he's just sitting in the foyer.
Mm.
Hmm.
And I'm like, hey man, are you okay? And he was like, I thought this was a Baptist church. And I'm like, no, we're Pentecostal. And he was like, is that woman okay? And I'm like, yeah, she's fine. And he was like, what? You know, he's like, what happened? So
Yeah.
you just kind of had to explain it. That's what I love about, my pastor now is that he understands that. And so he does take the time to explain it. Whereas I believe just in 90s culture, you just kind of assume that everybody knew what was going on.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of trust involved back in the 90s that you kind of just trust your leaders and trust the system that you're in. That's going to be
So
fine.
yeah, I guess anything that might be something that would be different.
Sure. Sure. That's a very interesting answer. I do remember, not in youth group, but in college going to the Pentecostal church in town. We had a just kind of self-started Bible study on campus. I went to liberal college as well. And so, we had a group of, rather conservative Christians that want to kind of do their own thing, not FCA. We ended up doing a lot of intervarsity. But we also just had this Thursday night Bible study. Well, it was led by the Pentecostal pastor from town. He was a great, great dude. And we went to his church a couple of times, and they had to kind of prep me for it. Like,
Yeah.
okay, you're going to see this. You're going to hear this. They're not going to make sense. And hey, we had that experience, a number of times, and it was helpful for me. So there's nothing wrong with that. I will ask, though, like you have said, you listen to a lot of books, podcasts, music all the time. Is there someone, you've mentioned a few of them, but is there a author or pastor, somebody that you've discovered that you really cling on to and that you really, have learned a lot from?
Yeah, I would say that that the Joshua Porter, just listening to his well, I say podcast, but it's really just his sermons.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know if it's the fact that I was a fan of Showbread or that I just find him to be very articulate in the way that he delivers things.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess, the fact that I'm Pentecostal, I don't see a whole lot from other sides. I don't even know if his church is what denomination they would be affiliated with. But I guess just the way that he delivers his sermons, like they're very thought provoking.
Mm-hmm.
They just kind of, he can paint a picture with words that I really like, and so he just gives me something to think about every time he preaches.
That's awesome.
I think he's a guy who like didn't he kind of went through a whole like deconstruction. I think like so many of the Christian music artists where I think he felt a little chewed up and spit out by the
Hmm.
Christian music industry. And then he kind of went through a deconstruction phase and then kind of I would say reassembled his faith
Hmm.
like as an adult. I wonder if that does that have like is there those aspects of it that you do you feel like you can connect that with that even though you doesn't sound like you've gone through that. You've been more kind of a 19 years of serving. It's kind of been more of a slow and steady kind of process. But can you connect with his when he talks about some of those things and when those sorts of things come up in his messages, or is there something that just like kind of pops about those ideas?
Yeah, he actually wrote a book called Death to Deconstruction.
Yeah.
So after he went through his whole phase, and just kind of decided that this is what I'm gonna believe in. Another part of it too is that I fell real heavy into Christian music and then other music, and so I started going to a lot of shows. I started getting tattoos, and I can relate to him through that.
Hmm.
Nice. So, as an adult, has there been an impactful life event that has been significantly impacting or altering your spiritual life?
So I don't know if it's so much an event, but I think I came to the conclusion that I can only be myself,
Hmm.
and I can't be anybody different than who I am. For a long time, I think I kind of struggled to find where I fit in, because I was different. I listened to different music. Uh, I started getting tattoos, and so I felt somewhat like an outcast. But I think at some point, I just kind of realized it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks.
Mm,
Like if this is who you are, then this is who you need to be.
mm,
And I think that just gave me freedom to be who I am. And so just living that out and not trying to hide it from anybody. I've had people say like, "Man, you're not anything like I thought you were going to be." And I'm like, "That's because you don't judge a book without reading it."
that's right. That's right. That's a great answer. It's a very thoughtful answer. Any of those you mentioned music here a couple of times. Any of those bands that you got into that heavily influenced your theology or your spiritual life? I mean, is there a band that you just really cling on to? Obviously, for Caleb and I, it's Five Iron, and for a lot of people, like, who's your favorite band in that regard for spiritual impact?
Oof.
That's not on the list. Sorry,
This is a heavy question. Off topic too. No prep work for that. Good luck.
not on the list. I'm so sorry.
Oh man, I mean, there's so many, but
You're allowed to change your answer in 2 years when you come back on the show for something.
well,
We'll just
that's
re-answer. So it's no, there's freedom to get it wrong if you
Yeah.
change your mind in 2 years. We're not gonna hold this to you later.
uh oh man, like theology as far as bands go. Um, I mean, I'll probably have to go with Showbread,
Hmm.
um, because Josh Dives would just again write some things that made you think. I remember he did the whole album called Anorexia Nervosa, and I'm a huge fan of anything that's like Caleb, you might have to help me out. What? A concept album.
Yeah.
And so basically, he did a whole concept album, where you read a story that was separate from the lyrics while the music was playing.
Hmm.
And so that
Cool.
anybody who does anything like that, it'll get you thinking. So I wouldn't really say there's a band, but maybe a concept albums. So I can think of Anorexia Nervosa as a concept album, and it's about two sisters, both choosing different paths, but then
Mm.
both finally realizing that what they need is the same thing.
Hmm.
I won't spoil it for anybody else. Uh, uh,
Uh,
but another album would be Zayo's The Funeral of God.
mm,
So Dan, the singer, just asked this question like, what if God just one day said, you know what, I'm tired of this humanity that I created who turns their back on me and I'm just gonna be done. And so he basically decides he's gonna go to sleep forever. And then the rest of the album is like what happens when there's no God left.
Hmm.
mm,
And kind of through the album, when you find out if there's no God, then there's no hope.
mm,
Hmm.
So that album had a big impact on me. And then the last one I'll say, and this kind of will swing us back to how youth group affects us today. So part of the things that I have done as a volunteer was actually having a drama team for a few years. And even up to 5 years ago, I had decided that I wanted to go big. And what I wanted to do was a drama to an entire album.
Hmm.
whoa.
And so I found Cool Hand Luke's album of Man, which is
Okay.
basically the Holy Week of Jesus.
Mm,
Minus like the first two songs, it just tells the whole story of Holy Week. And so that I listen to that album every Easter. Um,
mm,
it's one of those I go back to. And just seeing the life story of Jesus. But to go back to youth group with it, we I had a group of like 10 students, and we came in. We would do dramas during services, and then there was kind of a transition where it was like, hey, we're going to move away from this, and we're not going to do this. We're not going to do these dramas during services anymore.
mm,
And so we would still do some of them in the youth group, but I was like, well, this is a great time to pivot and let's just do this whole entire drama. and we'll set it up where we invite everybody to come one night and just kind of be like a play. If
Hmm.
you know, you just hit play and let the whole 50 minutes roll. We practiced for an entire year, and we were
Wow.
about a month away from being able to present this thing, and COVID-19 hit.
Hmm.
No.
Yes, COVID-19 hit, and I don't know if we were. I mean, I want to believe we were going to pull it off. I was going to have to bring in
Uh-huh.
some extras just to cover in, the amount of people we needed. But COVID hit, and then after that break, there was no more drama team.
Hmm.
No. That's like heartbreaking. You worked so hard on it.
Uh, I got to see it practiced out,
Sure.
so part of me is fulfilled.
Sure.
Hmm. I was gonna ask if there's a copy of it on YouTube or something, but
Yeah.
it doesn't
No,
sound like
it,
it
it does
ever
not
got
exist.
performed. Oh
Yeah.
man.
But hey, once that team talent gets in you, it's kind of part of you forever.
I was gonna say.
That was not a category. Do a drama to an entire album.
Yeah, it had to be 5 minutes or less. Unless it was some punk album we don't know about.
You got to be careful with that 5 Iron Frenzy stuff though.
But oh, that's great. That's a really, really cool idea. I'm really sad you didn't get to pull it off, but still, I'm sure that kids who were involved still learned a lot from it. And I mean, going through the creative process of portraying that, it does affect people. It does change people, even though it may not be a direct word from the gospel itself. God speaks through art like that all the time. So that's really cool. A couple more questions for you, traditional kind of end of interview questions. What would your 18-year-old self say to your 44-year-old self and vice versa?
All right, so my 18-year-old self would tell my 44-year-old self that all of my tattoos are a sin and I don't need to have them.
I don't think we haven't heard that
We
one
haven't heard the
before.
tattoo
That's
thing yet,
great.
But
but you're right. I can see it.
but well, and when I was in high school, the Young Life was active at the college that I eventually went to.
Uh-huh.
It was in the same town, and
Hmm.
so the Young Life leaders that I had started getting tattoos, and my 18-year-old self told them that's a sin.
Hmm.
So then they actually started explaining stuff to me, and I was like, oh wait, I actually need to start looking these words up.
Hmm. That's
Oh my
crazy.
gosh.
Yeah,
Um,
that's definitely a first. We've not had anybody like younger self criticize tattoos
Yeah.
or piercings or anything like that. That's interesting.
Well, the tattoo piercing thing is certainly a bygone of a different era, right? Like
Yeah.
our parents, our grandparents' generation were absolutely against those things,
oh yes.
Christianity wise. Like that was clearly a sin, as you believed, and it's just the kind of a microcosm of how things have changed over time. you
Yeah.
know, my grandparents, if they were still alive, they would be mortified if I ever got a tattoo.
Funny story is my brother got a tattoo first, and he actually wrote a letter to our parents asking
Oh.
and explaining why he wanted to get it. So now, 23 years later, I have an appointment to go back with both my mom and dad. And my mom's getting her second tattoo, and my dad's getting his sixth tattoo.
No
Wow, that's
way.
awesome.
So, so we converted them.
Wow.
That's
It's
great.
amazing. Oh, that's a really, really good story to just kind of capture it all. Excellent.
Yeah, I mean, I would not have believed that. Like, you could not have told me at 18 that one day I would go to the tattoo shop with my parents and we would all
Hmm.
get a tattoo.
Right. Alternative reality there. What about your 44-year-old self? What would you say to your youth group self?
So I would tell my youth group self probably to not seriously date until you are ready to get married and the person you're dating is ready to get married.
Mm.
Hmm.
There's a lot of dating going on in the youth group, that's for sure.
Yes.
Fair enough. Well, at the end of the day, how does your 90s youth group experience contribute to the person you are right now?
So my youth pastor had this acronym that he would say to us all the time, and it was JOY, which meant Jesus first, yourself last, and others in between.
Hmm.
Hmm.
I can't say that I always put Jesus first, but I definitely in my life have tried to put others ahead of myself. So I really do believe that that has stuck with me. That one teaching, it's just, serve others. Basically, what Jesus broke down is love your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah.
And so I always try to put other people ahead of me, whatever their needs are. How can I serve them? Another thing is I would definitely say that it just gave us a work ethic. Like I said, doing those car washes and cutting that grass. It really taught me how to serve. Before my last job, I worked at a nonprofit for a while with my friend, and any kind of nonprofit, it's pretty tough work.
Yeah.
And so there's just, we would do a lot of these block parties with like Section 8 housing at apartment complexes. So, just going and trying to be the love of Jesus to other people and not really expecting anything back from them.
Hmm.
I've heard other people say that, and I think that's just the purest form of love is just, being there and showing up for somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Without too much judgment involved and, finding out what their needs are. That's awesome answer. And that acronym was flying around our youth group too, but I forget about it all the time.
It was?
Sure.
Caleb
Man.
already forgot.
I don't remember that at all. And I was going to say, like, I think that's really cool because I think Scott, you and I think at one point maybe we answered it or maybe it was a mini show that we were going to do, but like, I couldn't think of like a teaching that I really held on to. So that idea that like, I think mine was the garage and the car, like just because you're in
Right.
a car or in a garage doesn't make you a car. Just because you're at church doesn't mean you're a Christian. That was like the only one I could like hang on to. And I'm like, that's not a very good one. And so like the idea that like, yeah, that acronym that it's still like there's a teaching that still impacts your life. I have some from the 20s, like my 20s that I still like really hang on to that are like became these kind of life teachings for me. But the idea that a life teaching happened in that youth group experience, I think that's pretty rad.
Well, and you were talking about your youth group. His name was Tommy, your
Yeah, yeah,
youth leader.
Tommy.
Like, he sounds like he was just living that out for you guys, driving you home, helping you out with different stuff, being there for you all the time, that sort of thing. That seems like that's your foremost memory of who he was, and so he just did that example for you. You just followed along.
Yeah, I mean, Tommy was single, I think, until probably his late 30s, maybe early 40s.
Mm.
And so, he has three kids now, but I like to think he doesn't have any hair because of all of us.
Yeah, well, that's true. That
I
might
mean,
be true.
there's so just, like a few stories on that. He took us to an Atlanta Braves game, and
Nice.
I couldn't have been like 12, 13 years old. And we're leaving the game, and my friend was like, "Hey man, that city looks cool. Like, you want to take a picture?" And I'm like, "Yes." I'll walk over and take a picture, and I turn around, and I don't see anybody in our group. And I just stand there because I'm like, well, somebody's got to be here. There's 30 of us. Nope. And so then I realized I had to find myself back to the church bus on my own.
Hmm.
And so I walk out of the stadium and I asked one of the people at the gate, I'm like, hey, where's bus parking at? And apparently they said gate G, but I thought they said gate Z. So I start walking and looking for gate Z, and I come back around to the gate that I had asked the question at.
Hmm.
And I realized, well, gate Z doesn't exist. I don't understand what that person says. So let me go ask the next gate. And they finally said gate G. So I understood what they meant.
Mm-hmm.
I finally got to the bus, and he was just like relieved that I was alive, but was really mad that I got separated from the group. Another time when I was an older leader, we went snow skiing. I know y'all don't ski, but he he,
We
he
don't
took
water
us snow.
ski. Yeah.
Yeah, y'all watch. So he took us snow skiing, and I'm sitting there on the bunny slope with this younger student. It was like his first time skiing, and I'm like, "Listen, man, you're good. Like we got to go up the lift." And I told him, I said, "Look, when you get up here, you just go back and forth, left and right." Well, I start going, and then the kid Cody, he just hits a straight shot, and I'm like, "You got to turn," and he is just going straight shot, and he falls on his back. but his skis are still up and his knees are bent and he's still going down the mountain.
Oh my gosh.
And then I see him like raise himself up back on his legs, and I'm like, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. And so like I finally get down to the bottom of the mountain, and the youth pastor is like, "What did you do to him?" And I was like, "He didn't listen to me." And so he was like, Tommy was like, "Listen, man, you can't take this kid." And he actually smacked me in the back of my head. And hey, I was like, "Tommy, you can't hit me." And he was like, "Yes, I can." I was like, all right. I don't think you could do that now, but in the 90s you could.
Things that have changed.
Yeah.
Slapping your volunteers. So, well, hey man, it's been really cool to have this interview. I'm really excited for it to come out because just a lot of fun things that we haven't heard before. Is there anything else that we always ask, like gross, Caleb's favorite phrase, borderline illegal things that you did in youth group? Maybe not. We're kind of finding down south it wasn't as crazy as it was up here, but like, is there anything that sticks out to you as just that was wild that, like you just said, we probably would not do today?
Okay, yeah, we could take another whole podcast for this. But
oh boy, all right.
But I'll just give you. I'll give you top 3.
Yeah.
I'll give you top 3.
Yeah.
So when I was a youth pastor for a year, I decided we were going to go camping, and the church had bought this land. It was by a major highway, so we go to set up the camp, and a Eagle Scout kid said, "Hey, can I start a fire?" I'm like, "Sure." And he started a fire, and it didn't stop. And we burned that field down.
Oh no.
So there goes your barn burning right there. We did not have a permit, and there were flames everywhere. And then one firefighter showed up. He had to get oxygen. He didn't make it out. I mean,
whoa.
Holy cow.
Well, I mean, like he survived, but he took in too much smoke. I mean, like 4 fire trucks had to come and put it out. So that was great.
Man.
Okay. Yes. Yep. That's a very good one. Yep. Burning a field down.
And then the Young Life kids, I felt like going through Young Life, so they made me do Chubby Bunny.
Yep.
But they injected the marshmallows with hot sauce.
Oh.
Oh my gosh.
So
yes. Josh, this is the content I want. Give it to me.
Yes, hot sauce. And then you're like, luckily, once you got the marshmallows out, they had bread there for you because water ain't going to help you when it's hot sauce.
Did they have a special name for that? Like, I feel like you can't just call that Chubby Bunny. You've got to call it something else. Like,
I called it "Don't Trust These Guys Anymore."
Okay, details. Was everyone filled with hot sauce, or was it like, hey, you get the special one that's filled with hot sauce, and you got to keep going?
I think there was 2 of us, and they were all filled with hot sauce. I don't know how they injected it. They had a syringe or something. They put the hot sauce in the middle of the marshmallow.
Oh my gosh,
that's crazy.
Wow.
So then at youth camp, this was a little bit after my time, but the same kid who went skiing down the mountain, for whatever reason, do y'all know like WCW, WF wrestling?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so in the South we say wrestling. I don't know how they let them do this, but like, late at night at camp, we would do like concerts and different things, and they convinced the people in charge to let them have a wrestling match. And so him and another guy just started fighting, and they set a table up. It was a wood table, and they put one of the kids on a wood table, and Cody walks up on the stage, which is like 5 feet high, and then there's a rail that's on the stage. So he climbs on it. So his feet are at least 8 feet off the ground where this table is. And he just flies through the air and takes the kid out on the table.
What?
ECW. He was watching. At least he didn't set the table on fire first and then put him through it, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Cody, if you're out there, I hope you didn't kill that kid. Just like
no. I think that was Brandon. I think Brandon's alive today. I think they had somehow kind of put a little bit of a cut in that table already to help it break.
Yeah,
Not
sure.
real sure. But I mean, this was like a concrete floor. I'm like, you guys are crazy.
Dude,
All right, you got time for one more?
yes, please.
All right, last one. So I was telling my pastor that I was doing this, and he was a youth pastor for 12 years. First off, he didn't. When I told him the name of the podcast, he didn't believe it was a real thing.
Oh, okay.
You can come on the show. We'll
Yeah,
take him.
come on. Come on.
Tell
And
him
I
to
was
come
like,
on.
I was like, no, it's real. You know this is true. So this is the one that he would do at his youth group, and it's called a blanket. And so you would bring a kid in and sit them down in a chair in front of everybody, and you would put a blanket over them, and then you would say, "Hey, take off what you don't need." And so, like, kids would start. The way y'all are looking at me, y'all have never heard of this.
No.
Okay.
Nope.
So kids would just start taking off shoes or socks, and you're like, "Are you sure there's nothing you don't need?" But the answer is the blanket. You take the blanket off. So he would have one. He would have one boy who was in on it though. And so when he brought him in, the kid would take off his shoes, his socks, take off his belt. He's like, "Are you sure there's nothing you don't need?" Here comes his T-shirt. Next, he's like, "Is there anything that you don't need?" Pants come out. Then it's like, "Okay, guy, is there anything you don't need?" Here come out a pair of boxer briefs. So now everybody's thinking this kid is under this blanket naked.
Uh-huh.
And they ripped the blanket off. And since he was in on it, he's sitting there in a pair of shorts. But he said that all of the girls were just like screaming and you know.
Oh, okay. All of these things are not done today for various reasons.
Well, and I told him, I said, we could not do that today. And he was like, actually, I'll give you permission to do it.
Oh my gosh.
And I told him, I said, okay, but if the parent calls, they're calling you. And he's like, I'll tell them I told y'all to do it.
Yeah, there's no way that would fly today.
No.
Holy cow.
No, not at all.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
That is, dude, you took that answer that question to another level. And it sounds like there's more stories. I'm a little afraid. But,
I'm impressed we're this far in, and that, I mean, we've never heard any of those. Like, you know, we're what are we in? 50 episodes in, maybe?
Sure.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how many episodes. I should be paying attention. And we've never heard any of those. That's crazy.
No. And definitely the first person from kind of down south who was doing crazy stuff.
Hey, it's just good to know that someone else set something on fire and the fire department had to come out.
I guess we kind of had someone kind of related that. I wonder how many people have fire stories. That I would think that's a common one because you get the one kid who's excited about it and starts setting stuff on fire. And
yeah, it's easy, you know, quote unquote, and you know, where you just burn something. Just need to find something to burn.
Oh man.
Well, Josh, this has been really fun. Thank you very much for reaching out. You know, I never thought we'd get this far, but to have conversations just like this one from somebody I only met 90 minutes ago is really edifying. Your experience is really interesting. Thank you for sharing your journey with us. We really do appreciate you jumping on and sharing that with us tonight.
Yeah, I really enjoy listening to the podcast. Scott, you do a great job of follow-up questions and keeping the conversation engaging. And good luck, Caleb, with editing it.
You bet. We got a family trip coming up. I got plenty of time.
All right.
You're not going to edit on your family trip.
What else am I going to do?
You're going to hang out with your kids. Weirdo. Jeez. All right, Josh, thanks very much. We appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Y'all have a good night.
Yep.
You too.
Thanks for listening to this episode of I Survived Youth Group in the 90s. We hope you enjoyed it. Once again, we do want to say thanks to Josh for joining us. It was great to have somebody who's kind of enjoyed the show and came on to share his experience. And hey, that was a lot of things that we had not heard about. Those were a whole bunch of different experiences. And that's great. That's exactly what we're going for. We want to hear about those experiences. Super cool to kind of hear about teen talent and, you know, the blanket game and some of those different things that he experienced that, you know, just were not happening necessarily in our youth group experience. So, and just great here to hear about how it's kind of impacted his life and how it's still a part of his life. 19 years of serving in the youth group that he currently serves at. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, just thanks, Josh, for coming on the show and for volunteering and hitting us up on the email. And that's how you want to do it. If you want to be on the show, you can just send us an email, isurvivedyouthgroup@gmail.com. Again, that's isurvivedyouthgroup@gmail.com. We are on Twitter as well, at the handle @surviveYG. We're not probably as good about checking that as well. So the best way to get a hold of us, if you want to, comment on a show, or you have thoughts, or you just want to be on the show, please hit us up. That's the thing, is we're not just doing our youth group anymore. We have expanded out. We want to hear about a whole variety of youth group experiences and kind of how they've impacted your life. So thanks so much, Josh, again. That's how you can reach us, isurvivedyouthgroup@gmail.com. I'm totally rambling. This will be interesting to see if anybody gets to this point. Please subscribe and share the podcast. Please leave a rating or review. Again, those are effective ways to help spread the word about podcasts. If you enjoy this show, you might also enjoy the other podcast I do. It's a music podcast. It's called the Album Anniversary Podcast. A couple of years ago, I started a calendar that kind of to research and document the release date of thousands of albums. Throughout the week, I post about them on social media, and then on the show, we just break down one of those albums. We want to find an album that's important to somebody, that it's an album they love, an album they cherish, and we come in and we talk about that album for about an hour. Just people share their thoughts, kind of a celebration of music. Once again, it's called the Album Anniversary Podcast. The music at the beginning and the end of this show is the instrumental version of the song Positive Charge by the artist Dread Pie Roberts. Thanks again, and we'll talk to you soon. If you enjoy this show, you might also enjoy the other podcast I do with my, nope, that's what I usually say.